Story 1. The complicated coffee order. There are moments in life when all you want is a cup of coffee. Not just any cup of coffee, but the exact kind of coffee that exists in your mind. Smooth, balanced, comforting, and just complicated enough to make you feel like a sophisticated adult who knows what they are doing with their life. On that particular morning, I decided to treat myself. I had woken up feeling like the hero of my own story. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping. My bed had reluctantly released me into the real world. I thought, why not start the day with the perfect coffee? A carefully crafted drink that would set the tone for success. I strutted into the coffee shop with all the confidence of someone who was about to make very specific demands. The place smelled like roasted beans and ambition. People sat with laptops glowing, sipping drinks that looked like they had been made by tiny barista angels. I felt ready. This was my stage. The barista looked at me with that friendly but slightly cautious smile. The smile of someone who had already heard 6 complicated orders that morning and knew another was coming. I cleared my throat and launched into it. I would like a coffee with no sugar, a little bit of milk, extra whipped cream, no ice, and make sure it is not too hot but not too cold either. Somewhere in the warm hug zone. And could you make it in a medium cup but with the large lid because I like extra room at the top. Also, if you could stir it counterclockwise, that would be amazing. The barista blinked. There was a silence. So long I could hear the whir of the espresso machine trying not to laugh at me. All right. The barista said, typing furiously into the register. 1 complicated coffee coming up. I paid, grabbed my little receipt, and stood at the pickup counter with the anticipation of a child waiting for cake. In my mind, I could already taste it. Smooth, perfectly balanced. My masterpiece in a cup. The barista worked with precision, shots of espresso, a splash of milk. Whipped cream swirled like a snowy mountain peak. My cup was crowned with glory. It was placed on the counter with my name written slightly wrong, but who cared? This was it. I picked it up, took a sip, and nearly fell backward. It was black coffee. No sugar, no milk, no whipped cream, no nothing. Just pure, bitter, unapologetic darkness. My taste buds screamed. My soul left my body for a second. This was not the silky creation of my dreams. This was the villain of the coffee world. This was the drink of people who chew nails for breakfast and enjoy tax forms. I stared at the cup in disbelief. I turned it around as if somewhere on the other side whipped cream would magically appear. Nothing, just black liquid staring back at me, daring me to complain. The barista, sensing my confusion, leaned over the counter. Everything okay with your drink? I considered my options. Option 1. Complain, explain, and risk looking like the fussy customer who cannot survive without a custom coffee order. Option 2. Pretend this was what I wanted all along and power through it like a brave but bitter warrior. I chose option 2. Perfect, I said with a forced smile, my voice slightly higher than usual. Just what I needed. The barista nodded with the satisfaction of a job well done, and I shuffled away, clutching my cup of liquid betrayal. I sat at a corner table, stared at the black coffee, and gave it a motivational pep talk. Listen, you and I did not start on the right foot. You are not what I asked for. You are not what I wanted. But maybe, just maybe, you are what I need. I took another sip, bitter, relentlessly bitter. My taste buds were holding a protest march. But I forced myself to keep drinking, slowly, carefully. Each sip felt like a challenge. Each swallow was a victory. Around me, people sipped their colorful, foamy drinks topped with sprinkles and caramel drizzle. I sat there with my plain black coffee like a minimalist philosopher, contemplating the meaning of existence. Halfway through the cup, something strange happened. I started to feel awake. Not just awake, but hyper-aware. My brain was firing on all cylinders. My eyes widened, my heart raced. Suddenly I understood math. I could probably run a marathon. I could probably explain the stock market. The bitterness transformed into power. I realized that maybe the barista had not made a mistake. Maybe the universe had intervened. Maybe I did not need a complicated drink with milk and cream and carefully balanced temperatures. Maybe I needed this raw, honest, brutally straightforward cup of black coffee. By the last sip, I was convinced. This was not just coffee. This was a life lesson in a cup. Sometimes you ask for complexity, and life hands you simplicity. Sometimes you demand whipped cream, but the universe gives you black liquid truth. And sometimes bitter is better. I marched out of the coffee shop with the confidence of someone who had just unlocked the secrets of the universe. My teeth may have been slightly stained, my tongue slightly numb, but my spirit was soaring. All day long I felt invincible. Deadlines conquered, meetings dominated. Small talk with coworkers almost enjoyable. That black coffee had turned me into a machine of productivity. When I got home later that evening, I thought about it again. Tomorrow, would I order my complicated coffee again, or would I bravely ask for another black coffee? The question lingered like the aftertaste on my tongue. In the end, I decided I would still order my complicated drink. Because while black coffee had taught me a lesson about strength and simplicity, whipped cream still tastes amazing. And life, after all, is about balance. Story 2. Lost in the menu. There are two kinds of people in the world. The first kind walk into a restaurant, scan the menu for 10 seconds, and confidently order something that sounds delicious. The second kind, which unfortunately includes me, take one look at a fancy menu in a foreign language and immediately feel like they are reading an ancient prophecy written in riddles. It all started on a Saturday evening. A group of friends had convinced me to join them at a brand new restaurant in town. The place was rumored to be upscale, trendy, and just exotic enough that ordering water probably cost the same as my monthly internet bill. I walked in feeling adventurous, determined to live the high life for once. The restaurant was gorgeous. Dim lights, polished wood, and waiters gliding around as if their shoes never touched the floor. My friends looked like they belonged there, confidently flipping through their menus with raised eyebrows, and I, on the other hand, opened the menu and felt my soul leave my body. Every single word was in a language I did not understand, not a translation in sight. No friendly pictures, just elegant names with mysterious accents on letters that looked like they had traveled from faraway lands. I stared at the list. Acqua pura de lusso, eau de prestige, H2 eau elegance. My brain tried to make sense of it, but all I could think was that these sounded like perfumes, not dinner. My friends started ordering. I will have the filet de boeuf. Another chimed in. For me, the risotto al tartufo. They all nodded and smiled as if they had grown up in Europe. I knew it was my turn next. The waiter looked at me, pen poised. My palms began to sweat. I had two options. Option 1, admit I had no clue what was going on and beg for help. Option 2, fake confidence and pick something that sounded fancy. Naturally, I went with option 2. I scanned the menu quickly, my eyes landing on a name that rolled off the tongue in the most elegant way. It sounded sophisticated, cultured, like something only refined people knew how to order. I pointed at it and said with the kind of confidence usually reserved for astronauts announcing liftoff, I will have the acqua pura de lusso, please. The waiter smiled knowingly and scribbled it down. My friends raised their eyebrows but said nothing. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like I had just passed some kind of secret test. Maybe I was fancier than I thought. We chatted as the food arrived. Platters of sizzling meat, bowls of aromatic pasta, plates that look like artwork. Then the waiter returned with my order. He sat down in front of me. A tall, slender glass filled with clear liquid. It was water. Not sparkling water. Not infused with fruit or herbs. Just plain, clear, everyday water. I blinked, my friends blinked. There was a silence heavy enough to cut with a steak knife. Finally, one of them whispered, "Did you just order water?" I looked at the glass, then at the menu, then at the waiter, who gave me a polite nod as if to say, "Yes, this is exactly what you asked for." The worst part, when the bill arrived, I discovered that my elegant glass of water cost more than an entire burger meal at a fast food place. Apparently, Acqua Pura di Lusso was luxury imported water, served in a fancy bottle with a label that probably had more style than my entire wardrobe. I took a sip. It tasted like water, regular water, no magical properties. No burst of flavor, no secret ingredient. Just H2O that had probably traveled farther than I ever had. My friends could not stop laughing. "You came all the way here to order a glass of water?" One of them teased. Another added, "At least it is designer water. You should frame the receipt." I tried to defend myself. Well, it is about the experience, hydration in style. But even I could not keep a straight face. I had been defeated by the menu, outsmarted by foreign words. Tricked into? Spending a small fortune on the most basic drink known to humanity. Still, I was not going to let water ruin my night. I raised my glass with dignity and declared, "To fine dining. May we always know what we are ordering, and may our drinks never be this expensive again." The table erupted in laughter. My friends clinked glasses, and I took another sip of my overpriced liquid humility. Later, as I walked home, I thought about the whole ordeal. Maybe there was a lesson hidden in that ridiculously priced glass. Maybe sometimes in life, you think, you're choosing something extraordinary, but what you get is simplicity in a fancy disguise. Maybe it was a reminder that not everything that sounds impressive is actually worth it. Or maybe the lesson was simply to never order anything I could not pronounce. Either way, I decided that next time I would do some research before stepping into another fancy restaurant. At the very least, I would Google the menu beforehand, because while water is essential for life, it should not require a bank loan to enjoy. The next morning, I told the story to my coworker. She laughed so hard she nearly dropped her coffee. That is exactly why I stick to places where the fanciest thing on the menu is a cheeseburger. She said. I nodded in agreement. From now on, me too, unless someone else is paying, of course. Still, deep down, I had to admit it was kind of hilarious. Maybe I did not get the gourmet meal I imagined, but I got something even better, a story. A story that would forever remind me that confidence without knowledge is just a shortcut to drinking expensive water. So if you ever find yourself lost in a menu full of foreign words, do not panic. Do not point randomly like I did. Ask questions. Be humble, or prepare to raise a very costly glass of water in honor of your mistake. And remember this, at the end of the day, whether it is Acqua Pura di Lusso or tap water from the kitchen sink, it is still just water. But only one of them comes with a receipt that can make your wallet cry. Story 3. Name on the cup. There are many moments in life when your dignity hangs by a thread. For some, it happens during an important meeting when your stomach growls louder than the speaker. For others, it happens when you trip on the sidewalk and pretend you meant to break into a jog. For me, dignity came under attack in the most ordinary of places. A coffee shop. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning when everything felt slightly tilted. I had overslept, misplaced one sock, and discovered halfway to work that my shirt was buttoned unevenly. Still, I decided to rescue the day with the universal cure for chaos. Coffee. I walked into my favorite coffee shop, the kind of place where the air itself buzzed with the smell of roasted beans and the sound of steaming milk. The barista, a cheerful young woman with a pen poised like a wand, greeted me with a smile. "Name for the cup?" she asked. "Ben," I said, simple, short, impossible to mess up. Or so I believed. The barista nodded quickly and scribbled on. The cup with the speed of someone writing the last answer on a test. She did not repeat the name back to me, and I, foolishly confident in the clarity of my one-syllable name, did not think twice about it. I ordered my usual drink, paid, and stepped aside to wait. People around me were chatting, scrolling on their phones, and glancing at the baristas in anticipation of their daily dose of caffeine. I hummed quietly to myself, imagining the comforting warmth of the cup in my hands. After a few minutes, the barista raised her voice and called out, "Large latte for Mr. Banana." The shop went silent for a fraction of a second, and then it erupted into chuckles. I froze. Surely that was not me. Surely someone else had ordered under the name of a tropical fruit. But as I looked around, no one stepped forward. The barista looked expectantly in my direction. "Mr. Banana?" she repeated, louder this time, as if calling for royalty. My soul left my body. People were grinning. One man whispered to his friend, "Did she say banana?" Another actually clapped. Reluctantly, I shuffled forward. "That's me," I muttered, my voice barely audible. The barista handed me the cup with a perfectly innocent smile, as though nothing unusual had happened. On the side of the cup in big bold letters it read, "Banana, not Ben, not even Benna. Just banana." I tried to carry the cup with dignity, but it is hard to look dignified when everyone is picturing you wearing a yellow peel. I could feel the weight of a dozen amused eyes following me as I left the shop, clutching my coffee like a trophy of embarrassment. Outside, I examined the cup again, half hoping it was some sort of mistake. But no, it was clear I had been rebranded. I was no longer Ben, I was Mr. Banana Dot all day. I tried to shake it off. At work, when someone asked why I looked distracted, I mumbled something about a rough morning. But in my mind, I kept hearing the barista's cheerful voice announcing Mr. Banana. It echoed like a title I had never applied for, but had somehow earned Dot by lunchtime. My coworkers had noticed the word on my cup because of course I had brought it back with me. "Banana?" one of them asked with a grin. "Is that your new nickname?" I tried to explain the misunderstanding, but once you try to convince people you are not a banana, you automatically sound more like one. The name spread around the office faster than free snacks. Someone taped a banana peel to my computer monitor. Someone else changed my Slack display name to a banana emoji. By 3 o'clock, my boss passed by and said, "Good work today, Mr. Banana." It was official. I had lost the war. That evening, I returned home and told the story to my roommate, hoping for sympathy. Instead, he laughed so hard he nearly spilled his drink. "You realize this is legendary, right? You will never just be Ben again. You are part fruit now." The next morning, I debated whether I should go back to the same coffee shop. Maybe I should find a new one, somewhere I could start fresh as plain old Ben, but the pull of routine was too strong. Besides, I could not let one little fruit incident control my destiny. I walked in, shoulders squared, determined to reclaim my name. The same barista was there, smiling as always. "Name for the cup?" she asked. "Ben," I said clearly, enunciating like I was teaching a toddler. "B as in Bravo, E as in Echo, N as in November." She nodded with equal seriousness, scribbled, and sent me to the side. I waited, nervous but hopeful. Minutes later, she called out, "Latte for Mr. Bean." I buried my face in my hands. At this point, I began to suspect that the coffee shop was not mishearing me at all. Maybe it was a test of character. Maybe they had a secret policy of assigning random names to customers just to see how they reacted. Over the next few weeks, the variations continued. Some days I was Benna, other days I was Benny. Once, inexplicably, I was Brenda. And, of course, Banana made a triumphant return more than once, but something strange happened along the way. What started as embarrassment turned into entertainment. My friends would actually ask me, "So, what was your coffee name today?" My coworkers looked forward to hearing updates. Even strangers in the coffee shop chuckled with me when I walked away holding a cup that declared me as something absurd. Eventually, I began to own it. I realized that names on coffee cups are temporary, silly little labels that mean nothing in the grand scheme of life. If I could be Banana in the morning and Ben again by dinner, maybe it was a reminder not to take myself too seriously. One day, when the barista asked for my name, I smiled mischievously and said, "Banana. Just write Banana." She laughed and wrote it without hesitation. When my order was called, I walked up proudly, raised the cup high, and said, "That's me, Mr. Banana." The whole shop applauded, and in that moment I understood that sometimes the world gives you a name you never asked for. You can fight it, or you can wear it like a crown dot. So if you ever hear someone at a coffee shop being called Mr. Banana, do not laugh too hard. It might be me embracing my destiny one overpriced latte at a time. Story 4. Forgot the wallet. There are a few moments in life that test the strength of a person's soul. Forgetting an umbrella on a rainy day is one. Realizing your phone battery is at 1% just as you need a ride home is another. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compares to the slow-burning horror of sitting in a restaurant after devouring a mountain of food, only to discover you forgot your wallet. It all started with hunger, as disasters often do. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind of day when your stomach seems louder than your thoughts. I had skipped breakfast, convinced myself that coffee counted as a meal, and then decided to reward my heroic endurance by treating myself to a feast. Not just a snack, a full-blown, no vegetables left behind, order everything you crave kind of meal. I strutted into the restaurant like a champion, my hunger guiding me like a compass. The place smelled of sizzling food and warm bread, and the menu looked like poetry to my starving eyes. I ordered confidently, waving my hand as if I were some royal guest. A platter of appetizers? Absolutely. A double main course? Why not? Dessert. In advance, of course. I even added an extra drink I could not pronounce just because it sounded impressive. The waiter raised an eyebrow at my enthusiasm, but wrote everything down without judgment. Soon the table looked like a food festival. Dishes arrived one after another, covering every inch of space. Pasta twirled with sauce, fries stood proudly in their basket, meat glistened under the lights, and a slice of cake waited like a grand finale. I ate with the determination of someone training for the Olympics of overeating. Every bite was glorious. Every sip of my mysterious drink made me feel like a world traveler. Other diners glanced at my table, probably thinking I was celebrating something important. I was not. I was just really hungry and a little too confident. Time passed in a blur of flavors. Eventually, I leaned back in my chair, victorious but barely able to move. It was time to face the final boss of every dining adventure, the bill. The waiter appeared, placed the folded piece of paper on the table, and gave me a polite smile. I reached into my pocket with the smugness of a satisfied customer. That was when I felt the emptiness. My pocket was as barren as a desert. I checked. The other pocket, empty, jacket pocket, empty, back pocket. Empty. I froze. A cold realization washed over me. I had left my wallet at home. For a moment, I sat perfectly still, hoping perhaps the wallet would magically appear if I believed hard enough. It did not. I patted myself down like a detective searching for evidence, but the truth was undeniable. No wallet. Panic bubbled inside me. How could I forget something so basic? I had managed to remember my phone, my keys, even a reusable straw I never used. But the one thing needed to pay for my royal banquet? Absent. The waiter returned, hovering politely. Whenever you are ready, he said, which sounded suspiciously like, please pay before we call the authorities. I smiled awkwardly, nodding. Trying to buy time, my brain spun through options. Could I offer them my watch? No, too dramatic. Could I explain that I was good for it and would come back tomorrow? That sounded like something a suspicious character in a crime show would say. Could I escape through the bathroom window? I glanced toward the bathroom door and quickly dismissed the idea. I was full of food, not agility. There was only one solution. I had to call for help. With trembling fingers, I texted my best friend, "Emergency, please come to the restaurant." "Bring wallet, I will explain." Minutes felt like hours. As I sat there pretending to still enjoy my drink, the waiter checked on me once, then again, clearly wondering why I was lingering over an empty plate like it was a piece of fine art. Other diners left. The staff wiped down tables. My humiliation grew larger with each passing second. Finally, my friend burst through the door, grinning from ear to ear, as though he had just witnessed the most entertaining comedy of the year. "Forgot your wallet, huh?" he announced loudly enough for the entire restaurant to hear. Heads turned. The waiter smirked. My shame was now public record. "Yes," I muttered, sliding lower in my seat. "Please just pay before they ban me from ever returning." He paid the bill with exaggerated gestures, like a hero rescuing a damsel in distress. The waiter thanked him, and my friend bowed dramatically, soaking in the attention. As we left, he laughed so hard he nearly tripped. "You looked like a kid caught stealing cookies. How do you forget your wallet after ordering half the menu?" I tried to defend myself, but really, what could I say? Hunger had blinded me. Confidence had betrayed me. And now my new title in his phone was Walletless Wonder. Over the next few days, he told everyone he knew. My group of friends would greet me with lines like, "Hey, do you want to borrow some money before you order fries?" Or, "Careful, he might dine and dash by accident." Even my mom called me and said, "Sweetheart, do you need me to buy you a wallet with a chain so you do not lose it again?" The embarrassment should have faded, but oddly, it became funnier each time we told it. I realized that forgetting your wallet once is not the end of the world. It is the kind of story people remember and laugh about. Instead of being a disaster, it turned into a running joke. And the truth is, the next time I walked into that same restaurant, the waiter recognized me. He gave me a little smile and said, "Wallet today?" I nodded proudly, patting my pocket with exaggerated confidence. The entire staff chuckled. Somehow, my shame had made me a minor celebrity. Now, whenever I leave the house, I check for my wallet at least 3 times. Phone, keys, wallet. I say it like a chant. Still, I know that no matter how careful I am, my friends will never let me live it down. To them, I will always be the one who ate like a king and then had to call for rescue. So if you ever see someone sitting nervously at a restaurant, patting their pockets with wide eyes, be kind. Maybe they too forgot their wallet. Maybe they too are waiting for a friend to arrive with financial salvation. And if you do not see their friend arrive in time, maybe offer them a smile. After all, everyone deserves a little mercy when hunger and forgetfulness collide, because trust me, the story will haunt them forever, but at least it makes for a very entertaining bedtime tale. Story 5. The wrong order switch. There are moments in life when you feel like fortune has finally smiled upon you. Finding a forgotten $5 bill in your jeans. Discovering an extra fry at the bottom of the bag. Or in my case, sitting in a crowded coffee shop and suddenly realizing that the tray in front of me had a glorious slice of cake that I did not remember ordering. The story begins on an ordinary afternoon. I was in my favorite coffee shop, the kind of place where people bring laptops but spend more time pretending to write novels than actually working. The air smelled of espresso and cinnamon, and the background was filled with the steady hum of milk steamers and overly enthusiastic conversations about weekend plans. I stood in line, scrolling on my phone, debating what I wanted: a safe latte, a fancy seasonal drink, maybe just a tea to feel healthy. In the end, hunger decided for me. I ordered a medium cappuccino and a small croissant. Nothing wild, nothing extravagant, just enough to make me feel like a civilized human. The barista gave me the little number card and told me to wait. I found a spot near the window, placed my phone on the table, and tried to look like the kind of person who has important things to do. Then came the moment. The barista appeared with a tray, calling a name I did not quite hear. She set it down on the counter and turned away to grab another order. I wandered over, thinking it might be mine. On the tray sat not only a cappuccino, but also a perfectly plated slice of chocolate cake. The kind of cake that looks like it belongs in a magazine, glossy icing and a neat curl of whipped cream on top. Now, let me be clear. I did not intentionally steal it. At that moment, I truly believed this was destiny. Maybe they had given me an upgrade for being a loyal customer. Maybe it was a random act of kindness. Or maybe the universe finally decided to make up for all the times I stubbed my toe on the corner of my bed. Whatever the reason, I picked up the tray with the confidence of someone who thought they had just won the dessert lottery. Back at my table, I unwrapped my fork like a surgeon preparing for a critical operation. The cake gleamed at me, whispering promises of chocolate heaven. I took one bite and nearly applauded out loud. Rich, creamy, sweet but not too sweet, a perfect balance. My croissant was forgotten, my cappuccino ignored. I was in a committed relationship with this cake. That was when it happened. A shadow loomed over my table. I looked up, fork frozen midair, crumbs of chocolate already decorating my lips. It was the barista, holding a small tray in her hand. On it was a lonely croissant and a cappuccino. She gave me a look, the kind that said, "I know exactly what you did." "Sir," she said, politely but firmly, "I believe you took the wrong order. That cake belongs to another customer." My heart stopped. My soul tried to escape my body. Suddenly, the chocolate in my mouth turned from sweet bliss to bitter shame. I tried to speak, but only managed a muffled noise because my mouth was still full. The barista raised one eyebrow as if she were silently judging every decision I had ever made. I thought it was mine, I finally managed, swallowing quickly. It was just sitting there, with a cappuccino. And I did order a cappuccino. "Yes," she said patiently, "but you ordered a croissant, not cake. This is Mr. Anderson's tray." I turned my head slowly, like a villain being caught in a crime movie. And there he was, Mr. Anderson, a middle-aged man with glasses and a laptop, staring at me in shock and betrayal. His eyes were wide, his jaw slightly open, as if he had just witnessed someone steal the crown jewels. I panicked. I tried to think of a clever excuse, something that would save my dignity. What came out instead was, I was just testing it to make sure it was safe. The barista did not laugh. Mr. Anderson did not laugh. In fact, the only sound was the faint clink of someone stirring their coffee at the next table, enjoying my humiliation. The barista reached out her hand, and I knew what had to happen. Like a child caught sneaking cookies before dinner, I pushed the plate back toward her. The cake was no longer a treasure. It was evidence. My fork sat on the side, covered in undeniable chocolate fingerprints. She sighed, probably wondering how many times a day she had to deal with people like me, and carried the plate back to the counter. Mr. Anderson followed her, glaring at me the entire way. I wanted to disappear into the floor, or at least hide behind a menu. When she returned, she placed the correct tray in front of me. Croissant and cappuccino. Simple, modest, and most importantly, mine. "Enjoy," she said flatly. "Enjoy." The word stung. How could I possibly enjoy a humble croissant after tasting the nectar of chocolate heaven? It was like being downgraded. From a luxury hotel suite to sleeping on a park bench, I bit into the croissant anyway, chewing slowly, my shame mixing with pastry flakes. Every time I glanced up, I caught Mr. Anderson peering at me over his laptop screen, his cake now scarred by the bite I had taken. I tried to smile at him, but he looked away, shaking his head in disbelief. The rest of the coffee shop seemed to buzz louder than usual. People were whispering, or maybe it was just my imagination. Perhaps they were all talking about the audacious cake thief who dared to pretend it was destiny. My cappuccino tasted more like humiliation than coffee. When I finally stood up to leave, I avoided making eye contact with anyone. My friend messaged me later asking how my day was. I told them I had been involved in a serious incident. When I explained, they laughed so hard, they nearly dropped their phone. From that day forward, they called me Cake Bandit. The name stuck. For weeks, my friends would send me pictures of cakes and caption them, "Is this one yours, or do you plan to borrow it from a stranger too?" My family got in on the joke. My mother asked me at dinner, "Do you want dessert, or are you waiting to see if someone else orders something better?" At first I was mortified, but slowly I learned to embrace it. After all, not everyone gets a title as legendary as Cake Bandit. Most people are just known as Bob or Sarah. I was known as the guy who once mistook fate for theft in a coffee shop. Now, whenever I enter that. Story 6. Wi-Fi password drama. There are two things. I truly need to function like a proper adult in a cafe, a hot latte and working Wi-Fi. Without the latte, I become grumpy. Without the Wi-Fi, I become useless. And so, on a sunny morning, armed with nothing but hope and an empty stomach, I marched into a coffee shop determined to conquer both. The cafe looked promising. Exposed brick walls, hanging plants, the faint aroma of roasted beans, and a playlist of jazz music that made me feel more sophisticated than I really was. People around me tapped away on their laptops, clearly getting things done. I imagined myself joining their productive tribe, latte in hand, Wi-Fi at my fingertips, perhaps even writing the next great novel. I approached the counter and ordered my latte. The barista smiled with that mix of friendliness and caffeine-induced speed. "Anything else?" she asked. "Yes," I said with the seriousness of a customer who knows what truly matters. "The Wi-Fi password, please." She leaned forward slightly, as if preparing to deliver a state secret. "Of course. It's written on the chalkboard over there." I turned, expecting something simple. Maybe coffee 123 or lab, please? What I saw instead was a string of symbols and letters that looked like someone had fallen asleep on the keyboard. It read H at V3AN, C3D at Y225. I blinked. My brain tried to process. Did I see that right? Was that an exclamation mark after the number? Were those capital letters random or intentional? Did the smiley face in the middle count as part of the password, or was it decorative? I took a picture on my phone, just to be safe, and sat down at a small table with my steaming latte. The first sip was heaven. Smooth, creamy, a perfect balance of espresso and milk. If only the Wi-Fi experience could be half as delightful. I carefully typed in the password. Incorrect. I tried again. This time, making sure I used a capital H incorrect. Third attempt. adding every exclamation mark I could see. Incorrect. My latte tasted less sweet now. I glanced around the cafe, noticing the other laptop warriors. Their screens glowed with open spreadsheets, presentations, and documents. They were in. They had cracked the code. Meanwhile, I sat there like a medieval peasant trying to break into a castle with a spoon. I walked back to the counter. "Excuse me," I said sheepishly. "The password doesn't seem to work." The barista smiled knowingly, as if she had heard this hundreds of times before. "Oh, you have to make sure the I is capitalized. The exclamation marks are exactly 3, and the smiley face is part of it." The smiley face. I had ignored the smiley face. Who in their right mind puts a smiley face in a Wi-Fi password? I returned to my table, clutching my phone like a treasure map. I typed slowly, carefully, like a surgeon performing delicate heart surgery. H at sign V3, a capital and exclamation mark, lower IC 3 capital D at symbol Y2025. Exclamation, 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 colon, parenthesis, dot, incorrect, dot. I nearly screamed. My latte shook in its cup. At that moment, I realized the cafe had not given me a Wi-Fi password. They had given me a personality test. A test I was failing miserably. Determined, I tried every possible combination. Exclamation marks before the year. Exclamation marks after the year. Smiley face at the beginning. Smiley face at the end. My laptop screen mocked me with the same cruel word. Incorrect. By now, the latte was half gone, and my dignity was evaporating with the steam. I considered giving up and working offline, but then I remembered I needed the internet to even pretend to work. Without Wi-Fi, my productivity would collapse like a house of cards. I glanced at the table next to me. A college student with bright headphones was happily streaming videos. The Wi-Fi was clearly working for her. I leaned over, lowering my voice. "Excuse me, sorry to bother you. What's the password exactly?" She grinned. "Oh, it's easy. It's H at V3 and C3 day 22-5. With a capital D and 3 exclamation marks, not 2. And don't forget the smiley face." "That's exactly what I typed," I muttered. "Did you put the smiley face in the form of colon parenthesis or the emoji version?" She asked. I froze. Emoji version? Was that even possible? Apparently, yes. She turned her screen toward me, showing that the cafe's Wi-Fi system actually accepted emoji characters. Somewhere out there, an evil genius had decided that customers should use emoji in their passwords. So I copied her method, pasted the actual smiley face emoji at the end, and pressed enter. Connected. The heavens opened. Angels sang. My laptop, dinged with notifications like a long-lost friend returning from war. I had internet access. The cafe was mine. I leaned back in my chair, triumphant. The latte suddenly tasted sweeter again. I was unstoppable. I could write, research, or waste 3 hours watching videos of cats playing piano. The world of Wi-Fi was open to me, but of course, the drama was not over. Just as I settled in, a man walked in, ordered his drink, and sat down at the table beside me. He opened his laptop, looked at the chalkboard, and frowned. The cycle was about to begin again. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, he was muttering under his breath. Then he went to the counter. Story 7. The spilled coffee disaster. There are moments in life when you feel like the main character in a glamorous film. You order a beautiful latte, you carry it gracefully across a cafe filled with soft music, and you imagine everyone looking at you and thinking, wow, that person has their life together. And then there are moments when you trip over absolutely nothing, fling your drink into the air like a failed magician, and baptize an entire cafe in a rainstorm of hot coffee. That second scenario is exactly what happened to me. It was supposed to be a peaceful morning. I had walked into my favorite cafe with the noble intention of drinking one latte and finally finishing the work I had been avoiding for 3 weeks. The place was buzzing with quiet energy. Laptops open, notebooks scattered, spoons clinking against ceramic cups. The air smelled like roasted beans and fresh pastries. It was the perfect environment to pretend I was a serious adult. I ordered my drink and waited at the counter. The barista handed me a large cup of cappuccino topped with a delicate swirl, a foam that looked like it belonged on the cover of a coffee magazine. For a brief second, I admired it. This was art, this was life. This was the drink that was going to fuel my productivity. I lifted the cup carefully, as if I were holding a priceless relic. Step by step, I walked toward my table in the corner. I imagined myself sitting down, opening my laptop, and finally, becoming the kind of person who works efficiently in CAFE acute S. But then destiny interfered. Right in the middle of the cafe, my foot caught on something. To this day, I'm not entirely sure what it was. It could have been a chair leg, a bag strap, or perhaps an invisible gremlin who enjoys ruining mornings. Whatever it was, it sent me stumbling forward. Time slowed down. I saw the coffee leave the cup in a glorious arc. Drops of liquid sparkled in the sunlight as if the universe had decided to film a commercial for chaos. People gasped. Someone shouted. A woman clutched her notebook like it was a priceless artifact about to be destroyed. The coffee rained down. It splashed across tables, dripped onto the floor, and decorated the cafe with abstract patterns of caffeine. One poor man, who had been quietly reading his newspaper, was now part of a modern art installation called Hot Beverage Meets Human. His white shirt transformed into a brown canvas. I froze, still holding the now empty cup, my eyes wide with horror. The cafe was silent except for the sound of jazz music playing cheerfully in the background. Completely unaware of the disaster, the barista's voice finally broke the silence. Well, she said, trying to sound positive, at least it smells. Nice in here now, the crowd laughed nervously. I wanted to melt into the floor. I apologized to the man with the ruined shirt, offered to pay his dry cleaning bill, and handed out an entire stack of napkins like a clumsy fairy distributing tissues instead of magic. The man, to his credit, was surprisingly calm. He looked at me with coffee dripping from his sleeve and said, I guess this is one way to wake up. I laughed awkwardly, still blotting the table. People around me began to help. Some wiped down the chairs, others rescued their laptops from the caffeinated flood. In that moment, the cafe turned into a small community of strangers, united by one clumsy person's disaster. Eventually, the chaos settled. The floor was mopped, the tables were cleaned, and the man with the brown shirt accepted a free croissant as compensation for his trauma. I sat down at my table, finally. With a replacement cup of coffee that the barista generously provided, I stared at it suspiciously. Could I be trusted to hold liquid ever again? Was I destined to be banned from cafes worldwide? Still, I took a cautious sip. Warmth spread through me, calming my nerves. Maybe the disaster was survivable after all. Maybe one day I would laugh about it. But then, as I opened my laptop, I heard a sound behind me. A chair scraped. A woman stood up with her coffee in hand. She took 2 steps, and then fate repeated itself. Her foot caught on the same mysterious object that had tripped me earlier. She stumbled, flung her drink, and unleashed another caffeinated tsunami. This time it landed on the opposite side of the cafe, baptizing a group of students who had been working on a group project. The room gasped again. The jazz music played on, cruelly cheerful. I locked eyes with the woman. She looked at me with the same expression of horror I must have worn earlier. Without thinking, I raised my empty cup in solidarity and said, "Welcome to the club." The students laughed, The woman apologized, and suddenly my disaster didn't feel so catastrophic. Maybe this cafe wasn't cursed by me personally. Maybe it was simply the place where coffee wanted to be free. From that moment on, I noticed something interesting. Every week, without fail, someone would spill their drink in that cafe. A man knocked over his espresso while reaching for his phone. A teenager dropped an iced latte after trying to take a selfie. A little kid pulled his mother's cappuccino right onto the floor. It became a tradition. The spilled coffee disaster was not mine alone. It was a shared ritual, an ongoing performance, a reminder that no matter how sophisticated we tried to look in public, gravity always had the final say. And you know what? It brought people together. Each time it happened, strangers helped strangers. Napkins appeared like magic. Laughter echoed through the cafe. People bonded over the universal truth that everyone, at some point, is clumsy. Now, whenever I walk into that cafe, I no longer feel embarrassed. Instead, I feel like part of a secret society. A society of coffee spillers united by stains and stories. And I carry my cup with pride, knowing that even if disaster strikes again, it will just be another chapter in the legend of the spilled coffee cafe, because sometimes disasters are not tragedies. Sometimes they are simply opportunities for strangers to laugh together, for a cafe to smell even more like coffee than usual, and for a clumsy person like me to discover that embarrassment fades, but stories last forever. So if you ever find yourself carrying a cup of coffee in a crowded cafe, take one piece of advice from me. Walk carefully, yes. But if you trip and spill it everywhere, do not panic. Just smile, hand out napkins, and remember that you are not alone. Story 8. Trying to be healthy. There comes a point in everyone's life when they look in the mirror and declare, "Today is the day I will be healthy." I had one of those moments on a bright Saturday morning. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and my reflection whispered, "Stop eating chocolate croissants for breakfast." So I marched myself to the cafe with determination. I was not here for a latte drowned in whipped cream or a pastry so buttery it could slide off the plate by itself. No, today I was a new person, a person of discipline, a person who drinks smoothies that are green and taste like virtue. I entered the cafe and spotted the smoothie menu immediately. The words glowed like a beacon of health. Green detox, super spinach blast, kale paradise. Each name promised strength, energy, and possibly immortality. My brain applauded me. Look at you, making good choices. Your ancestors would be proud. The barista approached with a friendly smile. I puffed out my chest and ordered with confidence. "I'll have the green power smoothie, please." The barista nodded, scribbled something on the cup, and walked away. My transformation had begun. Soon my body would be fueled with spinach, kale, and mysterious powders that tasted like chalk but promised to extend my lifespan by at least 20 years. I felt smug. Around me, other people were drinking coffee and eating muffins. Not me. I was about to become the type of person who wakes up early to do yoga and talks about gut health at dinner parties. But then, as I waited for my smoothie, I made the mistake of looking at the pastry case. There it was, a chocolate cake. Not just any chocolate cake. This one had 3 layers, each separated by rich frosting, topped with glossy chocolate glaze that shimmered under the cafe lights. Like a siren calling sailors to their doom. It was decadent, it was sinful. It was whispering my name louder than kale ever could. I turned away quickly. No, not today. I was strong, I was committed. I was drinking a smoothie and would leave the cafe with glowing skin and a sense of superiority. But then, my eyes betrayed me and glanced back. The cake seemed closer now. Was it moving? Did it just wink at me? The frosting sparkled like treasure. My brain screamed, "No," while my stomach whispered, "Maybe just a small piece." The barista called out, "Green power smoothie for healthy lifestyle warrior." Everyone turned to look. My ears burned. Yes, that was me. I grabbed the smoothie and held it high like a trophy. The cup was large, filled with thick, green liquid that smelled faintly of grass clippings. This was my destiny. I took a sip. It tasted like spinach had joined forces with celery and launched an attack on my taste buds. My face twisted. This was not delicious. This was liquid regret, but I nodded to myself and pretended it was wonderful. Health is not supposed to taste good, I reasoned. It is supposed to taste like sacrifice. I walked toward my table, smoothie in hand, trying to ignore the cake. Yet, as I passed the counter, the barista cheerfully asked, "Would you like anything else?" And then it happened. My mouth betrayed me. Without consulting my brain or my so-called healthy intentions, it blurted out, "Yes, I'll take a slice of that chocolate cake." The words echoed through the cafe like a dramatic confession. People turned their heads. The kale inside. My smoothie sighed in disappointment. The barista nodded, sliced a generous piece, and placed it on a plate. The cake looked even more majestic up close, practically glowing with forbidden delight. I carried both items to my table. On the left, the green power smoothie, a monument to my discipline. On the right, the chocolate cake, a shrine to my weakness. They stared at each other like enemies in a duel. I sat in the middle, the guilty referee of this battle. I tried the smoothie again, forcing myself to swallow. Then I took a bite of cake. The chocolate melted on my tongue like velvet. My soul left my body for a moment and did a happy dance. I alternated between the two, pretending this was balance. One sip of health, one bite of joy, carrot and stick, virtue and sin, kale and cocoa. The people at the table next to me were clearly watching. One of them whispered, "Is that person drinking a green smoothie with chocolate cake?" I pretended not to hear. Another said, "That's either genius or madness." Soon, the smoothie was half gone and so was the cake. My stomach felt confused. Was it detoxing or retoxing? My body did not know whether to thank me or sue me. My brain decided to call it nutritional diplomacy. The barista came by to clear a nearby table and looked at my setup. She raised an eyebrow and said, "Interesting combination." I smiled weakly and replied, "It's called balance." She laughed and walked away, probably adding me to her mental list of regulars with questionable habits. I sat there for a long time, sipping green sludge and nibbling chocolate heaven, reflecting on the absurdity of my choices. Did I fail at being healthy? Maybe. Did I succeed at being happy? Absolutely. And perhaps happiness was its own kind of health. By the time I finished, my plate was clean and my smoothie cup was empty. I leaned back in my chair with a satisfied sigh. Around me, the cafe buzzed with life. People worked, chatted, scrolled on their phones. Nobody really cared what I was eating except me, and that is when I realized something important. Being healthy is not about punishing yourself with smoothies that taste like grass. It is not about resisting chocolate cake until you cry. It is about finding a balance that makes you laugh at your own contradictions. Because life is too short to deny yourself joy and too long to live entirely on sugar. So yes, I left the cafe that day having consumed both kale and cocoa. I walked out not as a failure, but as a pioneer of a new diet philosophy. The balanced contradiction plan: one smoothie, one slice of cake. Repeat until you find inner peace. And if anyone ever asks me how to stay healthy, I will smile and say, drink your greens, eat your chocolate, and never underestimate the power of laughing at yourself. Because sometimes the healthiest choice is not the one that looks virtuous on Instagram. Sometimes the healthiest choice is the one that makes you happy enough to tell the story later and fall asleep smiling. Story 9. The Barista Crush there are many reasons people go to cafes. Some go for the caffeine that fuels their day. Others go for the quiet corner where they can work on a laptop and look very mysterious. Some go for the free Wi-Fi, pretending to write novels while secretly streaming videos. And then there are people like me. I went to the cafe that day for one reason and one reason only: coffee. Or at least that is what I told myself. In reality, what pulled me toward the cafe was something far stronger than caffeine. It was the smile of the barista. I had noticed them a few weeks earlier. It was an ordinary morning. I was bleary-eyed, half asleep, and mumbling an order that barely made sense. Then I looked up. The barista behind the counter greeted me with a smile so bright it could have powered the entire cafe's espresso machine. In that moment, my heart decided it was more awake than my brain. Ever since then, the cafe had become my new favorite place. I convinced myself it was because the beans were fresher, the tables cozier, and the playlists cooler. But deep down, I knew the real reason. My crush was behind the counter, frothing milk with a concentration usually reserved for brain surgeons. So on this particular day, I walked into the cafe rehearsing my order in my head. One medium cappuccino, please. Simple, clear, nothing embarrassing. I even practiced saying it in a calm voice. I would not stumble, I would not babble, I would be smooth and confident. This was the plan. I joined the line, heart pounding, like a drum solo. Each step forward felt like marching toward destiny. My palms grew sweaty. What if I tripped on the way to the counter? What if I said something ridiculous like, "I love you," instead of "I'll have a latte"? What if my voice cracked and I sounded like a squeaky balloon? Finally, it was my turn. The barista looked up. The smile was still there, as radiant as ever. I forgot every word I had rehearsed. My brain went completely blank, as if someone had unplugged the power cord. "Hi," the barista said warmly. I panicked. My mouth opened and produced a sound that was supposed to be hello, but came out more like the noise a goat might make when surprised. The barista tilted their head, probably wondering if I was speaking another language. I tried again. "Cappuccino," I stammered, my voice wobbling like jelly on a plate. The barista nodded politely, as if dealing with nervous customers was just another part of the job. "One cappuccino? What size?" Right, I knew this one. I had prepared medium. Say medium. Medium? I squeaked, my voice jumping an octave higher than usual. My face was now the color of a ripe tomato. "Great," the barista said, scribbling on the cup. "Anything else?" This was my chance. To be charming, to say something clever. Instead, I blurted out, "You have nice milk froth." Silence. The words hung in the air like awkward balloons. The barista blinked, then gave a small chuckle. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. "That's kind of you to say," the barista replied, clearly amused. My humiliation was complete. I paid, grabbed my receipt, and moved to the waiting area, mentally replaying the disaster. Why had I said milk froth? Who compliments milk froth? That was not romantic. That was dairy-related nonsense. I stood there, fidgeting, trying not to make eye contact. My cappuccino would be ready soon. All I had to do was take it, say thank you, and leave with what little dignity I had left. A few minutes later, the barista called out my order. "Medium cappuccino for froth fan?" I froze. Did they just say froth fan? Oh no, they had written it on the cup. The entire cafe turned their heads. A couple near the window laughed. A man on his laptop smirked. My crush had given me a nickname based on my embarrassing compliment. I shuffled forward, face burning. The barista handed me the cup with a mischievous smile. Our fingers brushed for half a second, which sent my heart into orbit. "Enjoy, froth fan." they said, their voice teasing but kind. I nodded, mumbled something unintelligible, and walked to a table. I set the cup down and stared at it in horror. My name was not on it. Just those two cursed words. Froth fan. I took a sip of the cappuccino. It was delicious, but I was too busy dying inside to notice. I replayed every moment, every stammer, every awkward syllable. I promised myself I would never return to this cafe again, except, of course, I did, the very next morning. Because the truth was, no amount of embarrassment could keep me away. My crush was still there, still smiling, still making coffee with the grace of an artist. And though I continued to trip over my words and blush like a school kid, part of me secretly enjoyed the comedy of it all. Over the weeks, my visits became routine. Story 10. Takeaway confusion. Ordering takeaway should be one of the simplest tasks in modern life. You pick a dish, you say what you want, and a little while later, food appears. It is supposed to be easy, stress-free, and foolproof, but nothing is ever foolproof when I am involved. It all started on a Friday night. I was hungry, too tired to cook, and craving something delicious. My refrigerator contained one lonely carrot, half a bottle of ketchup, and a yogurt that had expired in a previous decade. Cooking was clearly not an option. So I opened the food delivery app, ready to summon joy in the form of noodles. The app listed dozens of restaurants: Thai, Chinese, Italian, Indian, pizza, burgers, sushi. My stomach growled in anticipation. But with so many choices, I immediately became indecisive. Should I get spicy curry or cheesy lasagna? Maybe dumplings? Perhaps. Tacos? I scrolled for so long that the app politely asked if I was still there. Finally, I chose a restaurant that offered everything: noodles, rice, curry, and even fries. It was like they had raided the entire globe for recipes. Perfect. I clicked. On special house noodles, added spring rolls, and proudly confirmed the order, or at least I thought I did. 10 minutes later, I received a text from the restaurant. Your order is being prepared. Excellent. I set the table, poured myself some water, and put on a TV show to pass the time. My stomach rumbled in agreement. Soon, glorious food would arrive. But when the delivery driver showed up, I opened the bag and froze. Inside was not noodles. It was not curry, it was not even close. Instead, the bag contained 3 cheeseburgers, a large fries, and something that looked suspiciously like a milkshake. This was not my order. I checked the receipt. It had my name, my address, and the words "Triple Burger Feast." Somehow, the app had transformed my noodles into a mountain of burgers. My hunger debated with my logic. On the one hand, I wanted noodles. On the other hand, the burgers smelled heavenly. I decided to call the restaurant. The phone rang, and a cheerful voice answered. Thank you for calling Golden Dragon Restaurant. How may I help you? Yes, I said carefully. I think there has been a mistake. I ordered noodles, but I received 3 cheeseburgers. There was a pause. Then the voice replied, We do not serve cheeseburgers. Well, I said, peeking again into the bag, someone definitely served them, because they are here in my living room and they are looking at me. The staff member laughed nervously. Are you sure you contacted the right restaurant? I checked my phone. To my horror, I realized I had somehow placed 2 orders at the same time. One with Golden Dragon and another with a burger joint across town. In my hungry scrolling frenzy, I had accidentally pressed confirm twice on 2 completely different meals. Now I had double food. I sighed. Never mind. It seems I have confused myself. The Golden Dragon promised the noodles were still on their way. That meant I would soon have burgers and noodles, a combination that no one in history had. As for a little while later, the noodle delivery arrived. The driver handed me a second bag, looked at the burger bag on my table, and raised an eyebrow. I tried to explain. "It is a long story," I said. He nodded like he had heard it all before. Now I had enough food to feed a small army. I tried to reason with myself. You can save some for tomorrow. But the smell of both noodles and burgers together was intoxicating. I ended up eating half of each meal, creating a bizarre fusion of cuisines on my plate. The next morning, I woke up to find the leftovers staring at me from the fridge. Burgers on one shelf, noodles on another, spring rolls balancing dangerously near the yogurt from the past. I groaned, realizing I would be eating takeaway confusion for days, but the story did not end there. A week later, I decided to try again, determined to prove I could order food like a normal adult. This time I kept it simple. One order, one restaurant, one dish. I even triple-checked before confirming. The app said my food would arrive in 30 minutes. I relaxed, proud of myself. But when the doorbell rang, I opened the door to see the same burger delivery driver from last week. He grinned. "Got your usual triple burger feast," I panicked. No. I did not order that, not this time. He showed me the receipt. My name, my address, the cursed triple burger feast. Somehow, my app had saved it as a favorite. Every time I tapped too quickly, it auto-ordered the burgers. I was officially haunted by fast food technology. The driver shrugged. "Well, it is paid for, so enjoy." And just like that, I had burgers again. Minutes later, the noodles I had actually ordered also arrived. 2 drivers in one evening. 2 bags of food. History was repeating itself. At this point, I considered opening my own restaurant. I had enough leftovers to serve an entire neighborhood. The menu would be called Takeaway Confusion. Dish number 1, Noodle Burger Delight. Dish number 2, Curry Fries Fusion. Dessert, Mystery Milkshake. Over time, my friends learned about my takeaway curse. Whenever I invited them over, they would ask, "So are we eating noodles or burgers tonight?" And I would sigh and reply, "Both, probably." Eventually, I stopped fighting it. Maybe the universe wanted me to have a strange culinary destiny. Maybe the takeaway gods had chosen me as their champion. Maybe my clumsy fingers were simply too powerful for delivery apps. Whatever the reason, I accepted my fate. Now, whenever I open the app, I smile and think, whatever should